See.
Yep.
There we go.
Hi, how you guys doing? We're pretty excited today to get to join you guys for a story. We're coming to you live from our firehouse here in Wolcott, one of the 3 fire stations in town that the Wolcott Volunteer Fire Department has. Something neat you may not know is your town's fire department is all volunteers, meaning all the men and women who are firefighters in town. We have other jobs and occupations, and we come out and we train and we go to calls to help people when there's an emergency. I'm firefighter Brian, and in a little while, we're also going to meet firefighter Dan and firefighter Nick and firefighter Jill. But right now we're going to kind of keep a little bit distance while I read a story, because I thought I'd take my mask off so you guys can hear me better. And the book I chose to read today is kind of special to me. It's called The Bravest of All. It's a little bit beat up, an old book, but I'm going to tell you its story. It's my book as a little boy. It was my favorite book, and I think my mom and my dad and my grandparents probably read this book more than they ever wanted to read any book ever in their life, with the amount of times they had to read it. But my mom kept it, and it's kind of a little beat up and ratty because it's had some hard years on it, and it's way old. But I was fortunate enough to be able to share it with my children, who are a little bit older than you guys now, and because it's a special book to me, I thought I'd share it with you guys today. So we're going to read the book. It's called, like I said, it's called The Bravest of All. And it's written by Kate Emery Poge. It was illustrated by Al Anderson. So here's our front page. You guys can see the little boy sitting in the old fire truck. In a fire station in the corner of the city lived 2 great big hook and ladder trucks, an ambulance with a resuscitator, and a machine that grew great puffs of foam onto fires to put them out. Foam, it kind of looks like bubble bath, but we use it on like gasoline and oil fires. It's a special thing because water doesn't work so well on them. Also, there were 8 strong young firefighters. Here's the firehouse. You can see the firefighters in the morning. They're checking all their equipment, making sure it's ready to go in case somebody needs help. You can see the fire engine and the hook and ladder behind it and the ambulance next to it. And Jonathan. Long ago, when he was young, Jonathan was the best firefighter in the city. He and engine number 1 put out the warehouse fire of 1932, and the Wilson School fire of 1935. At the Great Hotel fire in 39, Jonathan rescued 132 people and was given a gold star that said the bravest of all. Here we see Jonathan as a young firefighter with the old engine putting the fire out. Engine number 1 was parked behind the station now. It was an old fire engine. Its pump wheezed and its paint was chipped. Its tarnished brass bell squeaked when it swung back and forth. See, we have the old engine now. It's in the last picture, it's all nice and shiny. Now it's kind of old and falling apart behind the firehouse because they had newer trucks and they didn't think they needed it anymore. Sometimes the neighborhood children came to play on engine number 1. Jonathan told them stories about how the warehouse wall had fallen on the engine and how he saved the children at Wilson School. Here are some of the neighborhood kids climbing on the fire truck, pretending they're firefighters. Haven't seen a fire yet old number 1 couldn't put out, he'd proudly tell them. And sometimes, if they asked, he told them the story of the gold star on his helmet that said the bravest of all. Here he is talking to the children about his career as a firefighter and some of his deeds he did. But the young firefighters said Jonathan was too old and they wouldn't let him work anymore. And they said engine number 1 was out of date and of no use to the fire department. One night, a fire started downtown. It raced through an office building and chewed through the store beside it. The sky glowed fierce red as the flames leaped high. Wah, wah! Through the streets of the city, it seemed like 100 sirens sounded. Stay here, old timer, called one of the young firefighters to Jonathan. Watch the shop. You guys can see the fire engines leaving and the young firefighters are on it, and Jonathan's kind of standing there. So off raced the hook and ladder trucks. Off raced the foam machine. Off raced the ambulance. Wah, wah, the sirens faded away. Kind of over here, we can see the fire engines leaving, going off to fight the big fire. Jonathan sighed and wandered out behind the firehouse where engine number 1 was parked. Far up in the sky, a few stars twinkled down on him. The night was dark and quiet. Here's Jonathan. He's kind of out back, just kind of thinking and just enjoying the night sky. Suddenly, the alarm bell sounded again. Someone else was in trouble. Jonathan rushed in the fire station, but the new fire trucks were gone. That ambulance was gone. The machine that made foam was gone. Here we see Jonathan. He's running in the firehouse, but the garage is all empty because all the trucks are out putting out the big fire. What's he going to do? Jonathan hurried back out, pulling on his firefighter's coat. We'll have to go, old partner, he called. We're the only ones left in the town. Engine number one coughed, boom, chug, chug, and started up. Clang, clang, squeak, clang, clang, squeak. The old bell rang. See, Jonathan's going to take engine number one because there's nothing else he can take. Hurry, old engine, hurry, old engine. The wheels seemed to rumble as they started rolling through the dark streets. Help somebody, help somebody. They squealed as engine number one rounded a corner. Here we come, squeak, here we come, squeak, clanged the bell as they rolled through the streets. So here we have Jonathan taking engine one out for one last fire. If you guys look, you can see engine one's damaged back here from that warehouse wall he talked about that fell on it. There was smoke rising from a house just ahead. A frightened family stood on the stoop. There's a fire in the basement, shouted the father. It's spreading through the house, sobbed the mother. It's engine number one and Mr. Jonathan, cheered the little boy. There's never been a fire they could have put out. And here he is arriving at the house on fire. You can see him getting off engine number one, and you can see the family out there waiting, and they're a little worried because their house is on fire. Engine number one started to pump. It groaned and wheezed and creaked. The stream of water shot through the hose. Keep it coming, partner, called Jonathan as he disappeared into the basement. So here's Jonathan pulling the hose in the basement. One thing you'll notice about Jonathan versus when we put our gear on later is, being that this is an older book, the firefighters didn't always wear their air masks. Now we have a special tank. It's like a backpack with a mask we wear. It can kind of look a little scary, but it keeps us safe from the smoke because smoke can make you really sick and even make you fall asleep. Inside, the fire roared, crackling leaped at him. It spit hot soot in his face. Never seen a fire yet old number one couldn't put out, Jonathan told this blaze, and you're not going to be the first. He turned his hose on the flames, and they curled back. See him in the building, putting the fire out. 100 red snaky tongues licked at everything around him. They jumped at him from under the wash tub and from behind the furnace and the stairs. Jonathan could hardly see. He could hardly breathe in the hot air. He was getting so tired that his legs didn't want him to move. Still, he tightened his grip on the hose and kept forcing the fire back. There's Jonathan back, taking on a lot of fire there, doing his best. Outside, a small crowd had gathered and watched and waited. They were afraid Jonathan couldn't do it anymore. The more the old truck pumped, the more it creaked and wheezed. It couldn't go on much longer. Suddenly, the engine number one shuddered inside and stopped. Everything was still. Nobody moved as the smoke drifted away. The fire was out. You can see all the neighbors are all worried about the house on fire and how Jonathan's there alone with no one else to help him put the fire out. Wearily but happily, Jonathan drove engine number one back to the station. It really wasn't a big fire, he said as he climbed down and took off his coat. But if we hadn't come, it might have been. Not a big fire, he said, pulling off his boots, but if we haven't gone, it might have been. Here we see Jonathan. He's tired from putting the fire out. He's getting back and taking all his turnout gear, as we call it, off. Getting ready to maybe rest and have a drink of water or something. The next morning, the big new fire trucks cruised home. They had put out the biggest fire the city had ever seen. They rolled proudly into the station, and the tired young firefighters hopped down from their trucks. Taking it easy, old timer, one of them said to Jonathan. Did you watch the shop? He said as he laughed. Jonathan said, yes, I did. Here are the young firefighters coming back. They're climbing down off the truck, and you look, they're kind of all dirty from fighting the fire and probably tired. And just then a small voice piped up. Where's Mr. Jonathan? Asked the little boy. All the firefighters watched him as he walked to Jonathan. You dropped this at our house last night when you were putting out the fire. My mother said you'd want it back. Here's a little boy coming to see Jonathan, and Jonathan's kneeling down, and all the young firefighters are standing there seeing what's going on. In Jonathan's wrinkled brown hand, he placed the star. The young firefighters gathered to look at it. What does it say? Asked the youngest and strongest with new respect in his voice. They looked down at the star in the old timer's hand, blackened with soot and tarnished from the heat. The gold still glimmered through that said the bravest of all. And here's Jonathan holding his medal in his hand, and the young firefighters are all looking at it, impressed that he has this medal, and they didn't realize it. So that's our story, the bravest of all. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm happy to get to share it with you. So what we're going to do, if you guys want, is we're going to get the camera, we're going to bring it over, and we're going to have firefighters Dan and Nick. They're going to put some gear on. I think firefighter Jill she's going to pop in and she's going to take over the camera for a minute. Say hi. It's firefighter Jill, and
You don't want to do it
go
now?
right ahead. Pick it up. Right there.
Got it?
Okay.
Over here?
Your hands on it.
It sure is.
We're having a little technical difficulty, but hang with us.
Hi, I'm firefighter Dan. Yeah, firefighter Nick's gonna come over here and he's gonna put his stuff on and I'll kind of explain his the gear that we wear. The first thing Nick is gonna put on is his hood, and the hood protects his ears and his neck and the top of his head. Then he puts on his boots and his pants all at one time. Right? And his boots protect his feet, and his pants protect his legs. Next thing he puts on is his coat. Right? And on his coat, he has a very bright flashlight that'll help us see through the smoke. All right, so everybody sees Nick. He's still the same firefighter Nick before he put all of his stuff on, right? The next thing he puts on is his air pack. And in the back of his it looks kind of like a backpack you guys would wear to school. In the back of here is a bottle that has air. So this allows Nick to breathe when we're inside of a fire. Okay. When we turn the air back on, it makes some noises and beeps, and that's just to let us know that everything's working okay. All right, he puts his mask on. And then he pulls his hood up over his ears. And now he's going to attach his air bottle to his mask. We can hear him start to breathe. And he might sound and look a little scary right now, but he's still the same firefighter Nick before he had all this stuff on. Right? And the last thing he puts on, the two last things he puts on is a helmet to protect his head. And then he puts on special gloves to protect his hands. All right, so if we ever see firefighter Nick dressed up like this coming towards us, we want to go towards him. We don't want to run away from him. Okay? All right, now he's going to take everything off, and you'll see that underneath there is still Nick. The same happy, smiling firefighter Nick. All right. And while Nick takes the rest of his stuff off, we're going to show you guys the fire engine. Okay, so this is engine number 2. It's the newest fire engine we have in Wolcott. It's a few years old now. Okay, and we're going to walk around. And as we walk around, we'll open up the doors and show you what's inside. All right, the first thing you guys will see is the drive. This is where the driver sits. He drives the fire engine to whatever emergency we're going to, and he has all the buttons for the lights and the sirens. Okay, and then the rest of us sit in the back. And in the back of the fire engine, we have seats. The seats have the air packs right in them, so we can put them on while we're on our way. You know what? We're gonna put the lights on inside the fire truck so you guys can see a little bit better. Hey, and in there we have some tools that we carry with us. We have an axe and a pry bar. We have some fire extinguishers that are underneath the seat. And we have some flashlights and some radios so we can talk to each other. Over here, this is where we get all the water to come out of the fire truck. We carry water with us. So when we get to a fire, we can start putting it out. And all these different levers and gauges, this is how we get water out of the fire engine to put a fire out. There's different hoses. We have smaller hoses up here. This is what we use to put a fire out. And then we have bigger hoses down here. And this is how we get water from other fire trucks or from fire hydrants. Inside here, we have more equipment for the driver. These are different adapters to connect different hoses and some controls for the truck. We have backpacks that we can use if we have to go into the woods for a fire in the woods somewhere. In here, we have some more hose if we need it. We have a couple of saws, and the saws can help us get into a building that's locked if we have to cut a lock or maybe cut a chain open on a gate to get into somewhere. In this back compartment, we keep more of our tools. We have a small tool bag with some hand tools. We have some axes. We have some different tools for brush fires, rakes and brooms and shovels to clean up after car accidents. We have extra gas for our saws. On the back of the truck, up here behind this cover, there's 1,000 feet of hose, and we can get water out of a fire hydrant that's up to 1,000 feet away. We have some bigger hoses for fires in bigger buildings. In this back compartment, we have the equipment we use to hook up to a fire hydrant so we can connect our hoses to it. And then down here, we have a small hose. It kind of looks like a big garden hose that you might have in your backyard. This is what we use for small fires or for brush fires in the woods where we don't need to carry the bigger, heavier hoses around with us. On this side of the truck, up on the top, we have some hoses that allow us to get water out of ponds or lakes. If we need to get water from there. We also have ladders, so if we need to reach up into a window or get onto a roof, we have a couple ladders to do that. In a few weeks, you guys will see the ladder truck over at Company 3. They have even longer ladders to get up to even higher places. Back here, we have a fan, so we can blow smoke out of a house after a fire, or maybe if mom and dad burn dinner and put some smoke in your kitchen, we can get rid of the smoke then too. Okay, we have some other adapters for the hose that we use. In the back, we have a big strainer, and if we have to get water out of a lake or somebody's, we can even get water out of somebody's swimming pool. We put that on it to make sure we don't get anything stuck inside the pump of the fire truck. In here, we have some lights that we can connect to extension cords if we have to light up a dark area. We have a couple of buckets that they have speedy dry, so we can soak up oil or antifreeze after a car accident. And we have another bucket with some equipment that is specific for if you have a fire in your chimney. And on the top shelf here, we have a couple of tarps that we call salvage covers. And what we do with those is, if there is a fire in your house, we try to save some of your property, and we'll cover it with these tarps to protect it. That way, it doesn't get damaged by the water that we're putting out the fire with. Okay, over here, we just have some traffic cones. If we need to close the road, we have an electrical cord that's attached to a generator. So if the power's out somewhere, we can still power all of our electrical equipment and power lights to to light up the area we're working. We have a long pole that we call a hook. So if we have to open up a wall or a ceiling or something that's up high over our head, we can reach. And the last thing that we'll show you is the front seat of the fire engine. And this is where the person in charge of the officer sits on the way to a fire. We have a special camera that can allow us to see people in the dark. We have an iPad to show us where we're going when we're on our way to a call. All right, and we have all the different radios so we can talk to our dispatcher when we are responding to a call. Okay, so that's our tour of the fire engine.